as part of that, as part of the general plan, you also have areas of spheres of influence, primary and secondary spheres of influence. These are developed for the what the city would like to see, where they want to grow in the next 20 to 30 years. Okay? The blue line, if you can see, is the primary sphere of influence. So based on all the committees and all the reports that have been generated, the blue line is basically the primary growth area of the City of Angels for the next 20 years. Everything outside of the blue line, between the blue line and the orange line, is what we call a secondary sphere of influence, which means it is outside of the general plan primary sphere and wasn't reviewed as part of the environmental impact report. So if the city were, in, let's say in 10 years, were to fill up this area in the primary sphere of influence and we wanted to go out into the secondary, we would have to come back, amend the general plan, do another EIR to then outline the areas that we are expanding into. Okay? So that's the sphere of influence. An area of interest. I probably should have gone backwards, but I'm going smallest to biggest here. The area of interest, which is the green line, that's the area of interest of the city, even though the city has really no intention of annexing the land, even though the city has not included it as part of the sphere of influence. It's an area where the city, sometime, somewhere out in the future, have opportunities to grow. Okay? The environmental impact report did not cover this whole big planning area. However, through the general plan committees and through putting together the plan with Amy, this area was designated as an area of interest, or basically a common area. If the county puts project areas with projects within these green area lines, the city would comment on those projects so that we have a say of what happens in the county. Doesn't mean the county will listen to us, but at least we have a say and try to condition those and try and put conditions on those projects that would help alleviate impacts of county development. Okay.
Sorry, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is the county bought into that line then?
Yeah, it's not an area of expansion so much as it is if they have a project. One of the primary reasons for it was water and projects that might increase runoff, which would affect us downstream. So that's why we have that.
And also, we have our circulation, our 2020 Master Highway Master Plan, which was developed as part of the process. So it outlines our highways, our collectors, our arterial streets that we think will be built sometime in the next 20 years. And so that's our arterial plan, the circulation plan for the city. So with that, if you have any questions regarding that process, I can answer those. If not, I want to just kind of turn over the reins to Amy to kind of talk about the EIR and how it's put together and all the different alternatives that were being prepared. So with that, turn it over to you.
What I'm going to try to do is save you some reading, if at all possible. I know a lot of you had some very focused issues that you wanted to have addressed, so that's what I'm going to try to do. The environmental document does not address just this particular project, as we had promised the public. The project also, and by the project I mean the general plan does include what we call the southwest connector, which does include the Greenhorn Creek extension south and the Angels Oaks Drive extension north. That is part of what we call the project. The other alternative that is fully analyzed in the general plan, look at table 6, save yourself some reading there, and it's in the executive summary, is basically what we call the alternative route scenario. And that is the one that eliminates that southwest connector. There is in that table 6 a rundown of all the things that differed from the proposed project with that connection going through and without that connection going through. The environmental document does not conclude what project should be the preferred alternative. That is something the commission and the board will have to decide based on basically weighing the various environmental impacts that could occur with the various scenarios. We did do the noise and air quality studies. Noise will increase, surprise, surprise, along Angel Oaks Drive and Greenhorn Creek Road if that is punched all the way through. However, the level that it will rise, while it's different, it did not meet the threshold of significant and adverse. And that gets explained in the document in sort of gory detail. Yeah.
I have a question, Amy. I don't know whether I heard you correctly, but did you refer to Greenhorn Creek and Angels Oaks as a southwest connector street?
Yes, collectively.
I beg to differ with you.
Oh, because of the term
Yes,
oh, okay, yeah, I did not say collector, I said connect.
I know what you call it,
Okay.
but I just wanted to make sure that you understand that both the committee at that time that went through that had a series of public hearings, and that was determined to be not a collector street, not a collective, but a residential street.
Absolutely, and we were.
So I just want to make sure,
Yeah.
'cause that's a
Yeah.
major
And we
point
go
of
to
contention.
fairly great pains to explain that in the document, but again, it's a huge document, and that can get lost. The term connector with an N is not intended to imply that it would be a collector. It is supposed to be a local road according to the proposal. So basically, again, the primary two projects that are looked at in the environmental review is this project with that whole connection going through, and that project without the whole connection going through. We also look at what would happen if we just stuck with the general plan we have now. What would happen if we didn't do any growth at all, and that would be less than what we're doing now. Basically, if everything is a moratorium, what kind of impacts would there be? And then we also have a 50% growth alternative. What if we only develop 50% of the land that we're planning to under the general plan? So those 5 alternatives are analyzed. There isn't a recommendation made in there as to which one to choose, but all 5 are put forth, all 5 are analyzed. One of the things that's interesting is if we went with the no growth and no project alternative, basically the no growth alternative, and we never grew another inch, we would still have some impacts that we can mitigate due to growth that passes through here, due to traffic increases that come through here, due to the fact that ozone, etc., from the valley flows up here, and unless we have really big fans at the county line blowing it back down, there's not a lot we can do about it. So the EIR does conclude for all alternatives that there would be impacts that we simply just cannot mitigate. They're out of our control. Air quality and transportation. Some of our streets, simply because traffic will increase from people passing through, will increase to a level that will cause some of the level of service to just go below what we'd like it to be. So that's sort of an interesting aspect to what's going to be an impact. You have to identify areas of controversy in your environmental impact report. There is one, and that would be, again, the inclusion of the Greenhorn Creek Road extension, the Angel Oaks North extension.
What does that mean? I'm sorry, we're new to this community.
Areas.
I don't know what that means, the Angel. I understand the Greenhorn Creek. I don't understand the Angel's North.
If you were to then go across the highway
Okay.
and pick up a connection that would come basically to Angel Oaks Drive, go across, and then basically go all the way up to 49 again, headed to San Andreas.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So basically, that is identified as an area of controversy that needs to be resolved by the Planning Commission and the City Council at the time the public hearings go forth on this. It is also identified as an issue that they're going to have to resolve, as I just said. We have only one landowner who had not agreed with the proposed general plan land use designation. We had notified all the property owners. We had received all of their input. Everybody is in agreement or has requested what you see on this map. And that, again, is something that the Planning Commission and the City Council will decide at the time that this goes to them for a final decision. So basically, that's it. If anybody wants gory details about exactly all the differences as far as impacts with putting Greenhorn Creek Road through versus not, I do have a summary sheet, happy to hand you that afterwards, or table 6 in the executive summary will take care of that for you too. So unless there are any questions,
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm on you, but
No, that's okay.
I'm trying to get a sense of the blue line
Okay.
and what that includes outside of what the city currently consists of.
we have in fact, here are the city limits, what you see in the light color. Our sphere of influence right now is bigger than this blue line. We've actually shrunk it. So our primary sphere of influence is actually going to be a fair amount smaller than it was before. We do not anticipate going outside of that by 2020. We put this secondary sphere of influence here, I guess I could say for fun. Basically, it's to put the county on notice as to what we may plan to do after 2020.
But I'm trying to get a sense of
Where
where the
this
road
blue line
is
is?
inside the blue line. And I could look at the map afterwards with you.
And you
going through
can.
everything.
Yeah.
Basically, this is the city limit line right there, and it coincides and just basically goes straight across there. It's not very far, like this is one whole parcel between where the city limit is now and where it would go. These are a bunch of public lands, so it's not that big of a thing. This, one of the more interesting things about this is we took some of the land that had been in here in the sphere, and we pushed it down here because a lot of people in their brain, when you start getting to the fairgrounds area and the Ramaggio house and the Ramaggio house, you start thinking Angels Camp. And so we sort of pushed it this way to make that a little bit more reflective of where we really had an influence. When there were fires down here, we're first responders. When the police go, first responders.
When and if the general plan is finally finished and voted on, how long is it good for?
This one will go through 2020.
Okay, so I have a question about this Greenhorn Creek dialogue you had a few seconds ago. The city council took that outside priority inside the 10-year priority, moved it outside the 10 years. So the city decided they weren't going to do anything for 10 years. So if for some reason the planning commission and the city council ignores whatever the majority of people respond to about this, it can't be done for 10 years, and then when you do a general plan like this, can any decisions that are being made now be changed in the next general plan?
You can always change a general plan every single year.
Every single year?
Yeah, you're required, the state law requires four,
2, 4.
yeah, it requires you can only amend a general plan 4 times a year. Okay, and in that amendment, that can range from a number of amendments, meaning you have basically 4 times where you can do it.
So are you aware of that decision that the city council made?
Actually, no, I wasn't, and it would not change anything that I have in the environmental impact report or in the general plan. One of the things you should know is that the transportation element in our general plan is also reflective of the 2007 regional transportation plan that was adopted. That document was adopted with that road in it. So just so you know, this would be a second document that would have it in it. It would not.
And who's the authority of those people who adopted it?
These, Calaveras Council of Governments, of which all the local.
Yeah, but they don't have any jurisdiction in our city, because we're the only city in the county.
No,
as
it's
far
not a
as
question
making
of
a decision.
jurisdiction, it's always a question of master planning.
Well, not only that, a project would need to come into, I mean, it's not like we would go out and build it tomorrow. Some type of project would have to generate that type of.
That wasn't my question. COG hasn't got any authority
No, they just
directly
recognize.
to the city.
No,
They'd have to come in and ask, right?
Well, they
Would not build anything.
No, they don't build anything.
Yeah.
It's just part of it's just part of regional network. They have no jurisdiction within our city.
They help you with funding plans for
Right.
priority projects.
Right. So for example, let's say 5 years down the road, a project comes into the city that wants to build that. Since it is recognized in the regional transportation plan, COG, the city, if we didn't have the money, would be able to use COG in the grant process to help get that road built. But that's the only reason why it would be in the regional transportation plan, so that it's recognized as a road. If there are grant monies available, then we could go after those grant monies.
And this
But-
is,
But it's not, but they're not telling us that we gotta build a road there.
I was a little late for your meeting.
That's okay.
Do you have this as an alternative also, the south hitting the new bypass?
Yeah,
Or
we
like-
have 5 alternatives that we looked at
Okay.
in here, and as we've been requested by the public, one of them is analyzed in very minute
And
detail.
how much influence do you want us to participate in as far as input? You know, you have the email in the paper, you want people to email you, and like tonight, you have supposed to have some stuff.
Well, yeah, what, tonight, the purpose for tonight, and I forgot to bring it, they're in the back. If you have any particular comments that you want addressed as part of the EIR document, then we would ask that you could write it down. You also have until October 9th to respond. So if you don't want to say anything tonight, and you don't want, and you're not sure, whatever, you still have a whole nother 30 days to respond to the
Yeah,
document.
they have it all, they have it in the paper, the
And
guideline.
if you want a little bit, I'll give you a little pointer in case you don't want to read lots and lots and lots. If that is the single issue you're interested in, as far as the environmental impact report goes, that alternative is analyzed in there, not having the road go through. Having the road go through is also analyzed. What you would want to potentially do, if you felt very, very strongly about it, is say, we think, after reading the environmental document, that the one that doesn't punch it through is the way to go. We like that alternative. Because this doesn't say you gotta have it, this doesn't say you don't have to have it, it simply compares
All 5.
the impacts of all the different scenarios.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point, if anybody has any comments that they would like to bring to us, we have a written comment form where you can write them down if you don't want to come up, or if you'd like to come up to the podium, where you can come up and sign in and give your comments so that we can respond to those comments later on. So yeah, so it's all open.
You'll never remember what I'm going to say. My concern is not so much a question as it is, and as some of you know, I've been involved in this little procedure for some years now. My concern is, as both of you have mentioned, this is a very large document, and it's something we're going to live with for a very long time. So what I went back, and my concern is, has everybody had the proper amount of time to review this? And for those in the audience that don't have this, originally we had a schedule, and I fully understand numerous things have happened in this little project. Back in June 20th of 06, we had the consultant's estimated scope, cost, and timeline. And starting with the completed noise and air quality studies to the city, September 6, 2006. Taking it through the draft ER to the state clearinghouse, January 2nd, 2006, you had 117 days before it went to the clearinghouse. If you just take the submit the administrative draft EIR to the city on November 15th, 2006, to submitting to the clearinghouse, we had 48 days. On April 3rd, 07, the consultant's report for the City Council Planning Commission, estimated timeline. Again, complete the air and noise studies, April 30th, 2007, to the clearinghouse, August 1st, 2007, which was 93 days. In June 27th of 07, consultant's contract extension for the general plan 2020 and the draft EIR project timeline. And at that time, it was noted by the consultant that 200 pages of the draft EIR had been completed. The completed noise and air quality studies for the city was supposedly June 27, 2007. And it would, the city would review the administrative draft EIR, incorporate the city comments, prepare and distribute copies of the draft EIR to the clearinghouse and interested parties, City Council and Planning Commission on August 24th, which was 59 days. 41 days if you start from the completion of the draft EIR. In our August 14th 08 Planning Commission minutes, committee reports item 10, general plan EIR, quote, planning staff will be meeting with consultant Amy Augustine on August 19th, unquote. The draft EIR was noticed on Friday, August 22nd, as Dave has mentioned, and the last day of comments was October 9th, 4 p.m., written comments, which has been mentioned, is 48 days. My concern is we started out with a very, very long review period, so everybody got their shot at this thing and had the time to look at it. Keeping in mind, folks, this is over 900 pages. I doubt seriously anybody's going to read the 900 pages, but the executive summary is 70 pages, and that obviously gives you the first step to what your interests are, and then you can proceed from that. So my main concern is, the question to you is, has all the city staff, including the planning staff, fire marshal, fire chief, chief of police, reviewed and commented on the admin draft DR? Notice I said admin draft. I know we have this comment period, and that's perfectly understandable. My concern is that has everybody had an opportunity to comment as we contracted for and was originally planned?
Well, I'll let Amy address that.
Just wanted to clarify a few things. The administrative draft EIR was completed in January of 2008. Then we did not release the actual draft EIR until August 22nd. Between that time, it was sent to all those agencies that you listed. And they did have time to review it, they did have time to comment. 2 of them chose to comment.
Including the planning commission?
No, the planning commission wouldn't comment. Their comment gets to be at the, whether it's going to be adopted or not. Because we went through such a long process with the public and writing it, because they helped us write the elements and the background to all those elements. And as we were writing them, talked about what impacts there might be, several of the city agencies felt they commented themselves out and didn't have anything to say at this point. Public Works did have 2 sets of comments, and planning had comments as well. So we got 2 sets back. We did notify everybody though that you mentioned. And again, January 2008 is when the administrative draft was released. August 22nd is when the draft was released after receiving the last of the comments. So there was an 8-month comment period for the city agencies to review and comment on it.
That's my concern. And just for the record, the CDs, as Dave said, unless you have 8.0 or better Acrobat, you can't use them. It'll come up as a correct file. And you cannot read the executive summary even on a 20-inch LCD monitor. And to download it from the city takes anywhere from half hour to an hour. Thank you.
Amy, I have a question based on your dialogue. With something this intricate and important, and based on your experience doing it for the cities, is it unusual for not the fire department or the police department to have some kind of response to, say, our 5 alternate ways around town?
No. They did give some input on the response time and how that would affect the response time. I actually went to them for some comments that got incorporated into the draft EIR. They did not choose to add any further comments. I called these people up to refresh the data that we'd already gone through.
So you had some input in it based on dialogue with them?
Dialogues with them, yes. Basically, we had that input initially to write the elements. Then we had it again because time had lapsed and we wanted to make sure that the information we had was still up to date. And because of the alternatives we decided to address, we had to touch base with them on some of those. And basically, primarily the fire department, how might that affect the response time?
I have a question, Amy. Did I understand you correctly that there have been changes in the general plan? And am I also correct that you underlined those changes in the document? Would it be possible for you to make a summary of those? I thought you said that, and is that possible we can get one of those?
The executive summary, which you can get in a hard copy, in addition to summarizing all the mitigation measures, also summarizes any changes in addition to mitigation measures in, in that are gonna be made clerically, and then there's an appendix, which basically has all of the general plan, goals, policies, implementation measures as they have been changed.
I understand that.
Oh, okay.
My question specifically was the changes that
Yes.
the new changes.
Yes.
I like to compare the new ones against the document that I have, and I wondered if we can just get those changes.
Yes, it is an appendix for this draft EIR. You can basically take it, and it red lines and strikes out every word that was changed in the original general plan.
And how big a document is that?
But the appendix isn't that big.
No, the appendix, that's
Appendix C.
yeah, it's appendix C of the draft EIR. Appendix C of the draft EIR.
Thank you.
Jackson City Council. I had the opportunity to borrow a hard copy, and I could not read it on my computer because the ledger size schedules are so large. And I think that anyone really wants to look at it, you have to have access to a hard copy, because I cannot read it on my home screen from the CD. I have some technical questions. You state in there that COG in their regional traffic plan of 2007, incidentally, I'm a member of COG, along with another city council. They use a projected population growth of 2.5%. When I read COG's projection, they are showing a number of 1.8% population growth through 2025. Nowhere can I find 2.5% in the COG. Obviously, population growth is a very important thing when you consider the impact of people and population. Now, I know when you originally, the 2006 plan had a city population growth of 3.3 to 3.5. And if you consider that, and I'm not faulting that because that was done in the context of the bubble that was going on with the build out of Angel Oaks and the introduction of the people in Greenfield Creek. Tremendous impact on the community. Now when I look within our community, taking into account, COG is saying 1.8, not 2.5. And I've got copies of the COG documents which I'll share with you. If I look at the population growth in the last 5 years of Angels Camp,
and I apologize to the audience for being technical, but population is a key and critical thing. If we don't have the right number, that has a tremendous impact on water and wastewater.
when I look at the population growth between 2003 and 2008, that's the Department of Finance figures, I come for Greenhorn Creek a growth of 1.2. In the last couple of years, we're looking at 0.6%. So my question has to do with why do you assume for the city a 2.5% growth down from a 3.3, which was in the original draft?
We actually assumed a range because there was such a range. We actually took the 2.5 that we may have looked at different things. My copy of the adopted element on page III of the executive summary does say 2.5% per year population growth. We also took a low number, we took a high number, and as far as the general plan and the environmental impact report is concerned, we take a range of numbers from the low number to the high number, realizing that we can't predict precisely. Department of Finances is, what, 50, 60, 70, let's be generous, 90% of the time they're inaccurate. We've had some inaccuracies in the past that have led to problems projecting for water and sewer. So we wanted to have a range so that we could basically adjust to things like, oh, we're having a big growth spurt, we're having a small growth spurt. And the ultimate number, the average that we end up with, is something that would be averaged over 20 years.
Okay, those are words. My question is, why are you ignoring COG's projection of 1.8%.
When I
And
talk,
saying the city's average will be 2.5%, which is greater than COG's estimate. And when the actual growth in the last 5 years for the city is 1.2%.
we can talk about that. I'll show you where they gave me the 2.5% number. I got it from COG, and I have it in their regional transportation.
In the RTP
Yes.
copy that I have,
Yes.
it's 1.8.
We must have different copies. My adopted copy says 2.5, but regardless of that.
Anyway,
yeah.
I think it's very critical that we get the best number and agree between planning commission, yourself, and city council members as to what are we looking at in the way of growth. I know several city council persons were very, very concerned about the original projection of over 3%, and how are we gonna handle that and the financial impact. And when you start to think of that, then immediately the planners have got to say, okay, now we've got to start looking at additional water capacity and sewer capacity, and we're into that, and that's all right. But that, just making those kinds of studies costs hundreds of thousands of dollars and time and staff time and deliberation. Okay, so I have a big question, and I'll document that with respect to population. Another question, considering the input of the general plan committee that met on over 40 times in the formation of this, is it planned to reconvene a general plan committee to participate in this process? Originally it was 2 members of city council, 2 members of the planning commission, and a member from the public to be looking at it and scrutinizing. It's disbanded now.
Yeah, and that's because you have the general plan. You put together the policy document that the environmental impact report is reviewing. So the general plan committee did its job in terms of putting that together. So now it's just the environmental impacts of what's been created. So to establish the general plan committee again to review it, then you would have to review the general plan, which would then change the environmental impact report. So that's why it's kind of.
That my concern is that there's been a number of, if this was done in 2006, I'd agree with that. But new information and new data, and Amy properly has taken that into account. Stuff that had occurred in 2007 are now incorporated into this document. For example, when I'm talking about the RCP for Calaveras County, that was a document of October of 2007. But at this point, you're not planning to reconvene that planning. Okay. Is there a plan for a workshop on this large document of over 900 pages?
On the environmental document?
Yes.
This is it.
This is the workshop?
Your chance to ask questions, this is it.
But by a workshop, I'm talking about the city has conducted workshops at significant points in time when we're talking about water or wastewater or circulation, where we talk about and have a workshop where someone is explaining, well, this and that, and go through it. For example, I think the reason why I'm talking about a workshop is the length of the quote-unquote executive summary. It is not a typical executive summary in the sense of it being a 3 or 4 or 5 page presentation that a person can get a sense of what is there and then go into the detailed backup. So I'm asking, is there any plan for a workshop where planning commission, city council people, and the public have a sense of what are the components in that executive summary?
I could provide you with that right now. It looks intimidating by its size. In comparison to other general plan environmental impact reports, it's pretty standard in size. That's why they do allow, at least 30 days and up to 4 to 5 days for people to review it.
it and ask questions. I can go through how the executive summary is organized.
No, I'm just asking a specific question. Is a workshop planned or not?
No, because that is not standard practice, and this is in fact a legal document that says what environmental impacts there are, as opposed to the policy documents.
Okay.
Where
Another question on the topic. Excuse me. On page 51, it says, talks about something that's been mentioned, areas of controversy. The primary area of controversy for the 2020 general plan is the inclusion of Greenhorn Creek Road Extension South. Large number of residents in the Greenhorn Creek subdivision are opposed to through traffic in the neighborhood. I'd like to point out that there are other people than just Greenhorn Creek residents. The people at Angel Oaks are concerned about that. The people on Finnegan Lane in the historic district are concerned about it and wrote about it. The people on Centennial in the annex are concerned because this Finnegan Lane extension, this Greenhorn Creek extension is right on top of Finnegan Lane. It connects to Finnegan Lane. So the people on Finnegan Lane realize there'll be traffic on their street, which currently there is none. And the people on Centennial in the annex, on its way down to Public Works, it would cross their street. So they wrote and they spoke about that. So I think you have more than just, it's called Greenhorn Creek Road Extension, but it is in fact an extension of Finnegan Lane and passing Centennial in the annex. So you have a large number of people that are being impacted. So I think this is a little short on the description of it.
And that's exactly what we're asking you to do between now and October 9th, is to write down exactly what you're saying so that we can
Oh, that's all right, but
prepare a written
that's an
response to that.
editorial kind of comment.
Sure.
The next one has to do with paragraph 2.1.4. It says issues to be resolved. And my question here is really about process. It says decision between alternatives. The whole table 6 in the executive summary is really a major task. You may not regard it as a major task, but you have all of these alternatives.
No, I did regard it as a major task.
Okay. Okay, so issues to be resolved. How do you envision that happening?
Basically, planning staff will prepare a staff report providing the planning commission and the city council with findings that they would need to adopt the project as proposed. And if so directed, they could also prepare findings for one of the alternatives or more of the alternatives. So basically, that's what happens.
Okay,
So
my concern was a public member, how do they participate in that? Is that would be during the hearings before the planning commission and the city council?
2 ways. You can respond to this environmental document by saying you prefer the alternative for having that or not having that. And we have to respond to that. And then also coming to both the planning commission and the city council public hearings. And then they make the ultimate decision.
So at this point in time, your feeling is there's going to be plenty of time for the public to get up to speed and become knowledgeable about it, and then listen and participate in the whole process based on input from the planning staff in terms of their findings.
Okay, I would say yes, because that environmental impact report, that's not the policy document that everybody's going to be implementing and worrying about. That's a legal step you have to go through.
Yeah.
If we want to, after we're done with it, basically dump it in the trash, that's fine. It just helps us not to get into a lawsuit. You want to concentrate on the general plan and what's in the general plan. And we did spend a long time putting that together. We did have a lot of public input.
Yes, I know.
That hasn't changed.
Yeah.
That document, yes, it does have some changes in Appendix C. They're relatively minor, to be honest with you. And we can certainly go through those if you'd like.
Okay. And then it talks about the next item issue be resolved, transportation route to be investigated. Southwest connector, parentheses, Greenhorn Creek Road extension, south, Angel Oaks Drive north. How is that going to be, it says, route to be investigated. What does that mean, investigated?
It means they're gonna have options. There are 5 options presented in that document, 4 of which are not the general plan. One of which is eliminating that route through connecting Greenhorn Creek out to 49.
So, but still, what does it mean to be investigated?
It means that
What's the
investigative is
process?
probably a lousy word to use. It's the public hearing process. They take the input at the public hearings and then they decide, which of those alternatives do we want? And oh, by the way, one of those alternatives deals with that particular transportation route. We're gonna have to resolve all 3 of those bullets.
So
At the public hearing.
maybe another way of putting that would be resolution of the transportation.
That would be much better. Much
Okay,
better.
but when you say investigated, I
Yeah.
wondered, what's going to be done?
That's just.
A detail. On page 61, it's talking about, this is an executive summary, it talks about fire response. And in there, it states, fire response 5 minutes longer. This is supposedly from the fire department. 5 minutes longer to reach Greenhorn Creek in the event that State Route 49 is closed. And you have to come up and go through a quote-unquote locked gate. Now, that just blew me away. And I don't know whether you're aware of it. We have 3 other fire locations within the city, in addition to this building. Within city limits. Very, very unusual combination. We have CAL FIRE, we have Maloney's, Alphaville Maloney, and we have a North Fire Station located in a public building called the Hydrox property. So we have those. Now, actually, if you were going to have the fastest route to Greenhorn Creek from this station, you proceed across the street onto Finnegan Lane, go up Finnegan Lane, unlock the gate, and you would be inside of Greenhorn Creek faster than if you go all the way up on the 49, all the way down on Stockton, all the way down on Angel Oaks. So my question is, where is the statement coming from that it takes 5 minutes longer because of a lock gate to access it?
Very good question. It's from this station on the route that you described. They said that the act of unlocking the gate and their response was in response to an emergency, like a medical response. The fire department stated that it takes 5 more minutes than it would if the gate wasn't there to unlock and if they had
No, the scenario described in there is 49 is blocked.
I know it does describe,
49.
okay, I can clarify that. That would be a good comment to
Yeah,
put in your
because
comments.
I don't believe there may be a problem of translation, let me put it that way, interpretation. Because I think if you ask them, they would say otherwise. And I think they need to. Another question. In the original draft of 2006, there was an appendix having to do with roads. This is planned regional facility improvements, a table, 3D showing all the different roads and when they. Is that still in the plan? Because I could not find that.
Yes, it's a 2-volume set. One is all the appendices, and one is the general plan goals and policies. Do you have both of those binders?
I looked on the CD, on the general plan that is on the CD, and I looked in the hard copy environmental impact report.
It's not in the. It would be in your general plan.
which has not been modified or changed, because there are a lot of parts of the general plan document that have underlying changes.
Correct, and those, you're correct, and that is shown in the environmental impact report. And if you want to not wade through the whole environmental impact report, you can go to,
Annex, there's nothing.
and that route does remain in the general plan. It was discussed, it is still in the list of projects to be pursued. It's not in the regional transportation plan, it was considered a more city type of a project.
So that's in another document,
That's in the general plan.
and it's not, nothing that's on the CD.
It should be in one of the appendices. That you may have with that CD.
Well,
I hope not.
I'll have to look at that. Okay, thank you very much.
Let me ask something related to the population, Amy. In a document that went out, which everybody's going to refer to, because nobody pays attention to percentages, it states that the population is going to be 5394 in 2005. And what percentage is that? This document that went out to everybody?
That's gonna be arranged, it should be the same thing as in the general.
Okay, yeah, because it's 5,394 residents in 2020. And speaking of the percentage of 6%, 1.5, 2.5, was that related to that in any way? Because this is what people are going to look at.
You're looking at the EIR one.
This is the handout that was, no date, no names, I'm not sure.
And I have no clue what you're
I
talking
think,
about.
Dave, did you produce it?
Yes, no, so it came out of the general.
Oh, okay. That was
I
out of
just-
the general plan.
I'm just curious what percentage is that? Because that's what people remember, 5,000.
Yeah,
Was it 1.5, the 6, the 2.5?
I'm sure that was the average that we did, but again, we did a range of percentages because we had had so much discussion on, gee, it could be 1.8, gee, it could be 0.6, gee, it could be 2.5, gee, it could be 3. So we basically did a range, and then we compared it to what actual growth had been historically, and we came out with the average and a range, and we actually used a range of population. That's an average that was given based on an average that's, I think it's one of those off numbers that's somewhere in between like a 1.8 and a 2.5. It's probably around a 2. If I'm sorry, I don't know my hard copy with me, or I can give you the exact percentage. But my recollection is it landed around a 1.8 to 2.
Thank you.
We'd just like to add a little information in regards to lock gates, in particular at Gold Cliff, coming down to Greenhorn Creek Boulevard and on Finnegan Lane. There's been a big oversight here using 5 minutes to open and close a gate. It's a standard practice, and I've seen it twice now in 9 months. All fire trucks have at least 3-foot bolt cutters, and they're used immediately, and it would take almost less time to cut the bolt of a chain link or the bolt itself before you could find the right key. So we need some common sense about the reaction time. The only thing that might be a footnote is that might be something that might be considered a standard piece of equipment in the trunk of police car for our city that may want to be considered. So I just want to add some more information about clarifying our reaction time over there.
We can go back to them and pass on your comments and ask.
So
them.
that really is a very ambiguous and not really a correct statement, and it's kind of an important statement too.
We will have them put it in writing.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who has a comment or?
Craig Turco, Dorado Court. Good evening. I'm a little late, so I apologize if this has already been discussed. In relation to the land use map, have we already discussed that?
Yeah, if you have comments.
Well, there's 2 areas in the land use map, but I thought the city had drawn up some resolutions to change the current land use to single-family residence. I could show you on the map, it might be easier to do if you like. It's this area here, which is, I believe, community commercial,
Yes,
and this, which is high density.
right.
I believe there was a resolution that discussed changing those back to single-family residence because that's what all of this surrounding is, that will leave that as the only commercial, community commercial.
And thank you, we need to reflect that in any motion that's made when, if the general plan is adopted, to reflect those changes that have not yet been reflected on the map.
Okay, so we're just, for the sake of this discussion, we're using the 2020 general draft map, but
If
you'll,
you've done
once,
something since August of '06, it's gonna get, that
So-
will supersede.
I guess, Dave, that would be
Yeah.
your department that will
Yeah, we'll
kind
go
of
back.
match up, marry up the resolutions to
Right.
make that, because that was obviously a big concern to a lot of the residents when we brought that forth to the council, that be addressed. And I thought it would, and I thought somebody was gonna change that map, but
Yeah, we haven't updated it since August of '06.
okay.
And all of the land uses that change from what's existing right now to that map will be notified. So that, those changes that you're talking about will be noted on the map, and those people will be, understand where they're going.
So for public comment, when will they see the final map? Because if everything's kind of in limbo, will there ever be a final map that the citizens can say, yeah, okay, that's exactly what we all agree on?
This process on doing comments on a draft EIR is an opportunity for us to do, I consider that a clerical change.
Okay.
And so we will make sure that the maps that are in the public hearing reflect what we plan to
Okay.
adopt.
Yeah, I agree with you, it's a clerical change, however, it's been a very long process to get
I'm
that.
glad you brought that up.
And
We will
just,
remind each other.
That's right.
just one other clarification, the citizens have until October 9th
Yes.
Yes.
to submit via email, letter, whatever, however correspondence to, I guess, to you, Dave.
Yeah, to make, also, you can also make your comments at the public hearings as well. So if you don't get your comment in, your written comment in before the 9th, the only problem is that we're gonna have to respond to it at the meeting at that time. But we want your written comments before, on the 9th, so that we can respond to them for the general plan.
Well,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
to those citizens listening, get them in
Yeah.
sooner so the council has
Yeah,
plenty of time to digest them, so it's not a surprise. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
exactly.
Hi, I have just a point of clarification for this little comment that you made earlier in response to Councilman Lynch's question about reconvening the general plan committee. And you said that that would not be done because if the general plan was changed, that would require changing the EIR. That would imply that the general plan can't be changed from the form that it is in right now. And my understanding is that the whole point of the public hearings is to still be reviewing the draft of the general plan so that changes can still be made to that document and be reflected in that document following the public hearings. So could you clarify that?
Yeah, sure, let me clarify. Yeah, the changes can be made to the general plan document. However, once those changes are made, they have to be reevaluated from the environmental impact report standpoint. So if you amend the general plan, say you're changing policies or land use or that, those policies will then have to be evaluated back to the EIR. The environmental impact report would then be recirculated for an additional 45 days. So it's not that this document can't be changed at all. It's just by changing this document, then we will go back and amend the environmental impact report to reflect those changes. So so if there are changes made at the public hearing, whether it's land use, whether it's policy implementation, whether it's whatever it is that's being changed in the general plan, it has to be reflected in the environmental impact report. And so you still can do that. And maybe I guess I didn't make myself very clear. You can continue because you're going to have public hearings on the general plan. There could be some changes that come involved either because of the environmental impact report that an alternative is superior. However, maybe it changes policies and goals in the general plan. Well, then we would have to go back out for the environmental to make sure that they're coordinated.
Here's what we want you to help us with though, is the more minor those changes are, then we don't have to go back through that process again. We can make minor changes, so the sooner you let us know about potential major changes you think need to be made, that'd be great. Obviously, we've addressed the issue in the EIR as an alternative regarding Greenhorse Creek Road. But if there's another big type of an issue out there that you think needs to be addressed, please let us know by October 9th so that we can have the environmental review done, so that when everything goes to the planning commission, the city council, hopefully we won't wear everybody completely out by starting the whole process over again. So yeah, you can make changes at the public hearing. We're hoping there, by the time we get there, they'll be relatively minor.
Okay. The other comment that I would like to make is that I would encourage city staff, whomever the appropriate parties are, to make sure to properly notice the public and welcome the public into the process. I don't feel that the legal notice arena is necessarily the most read aspect of the paper, so I would really strongly encourage the city to be pretty vocal, whether it's through the newspaper, through pinetree.net, whomever, to utilize all the opportunities to disseminate the message to the public, to encourage the public throughout all of Angels Camp to participate.
If I'm not mistaken too, the EIR is on pinetree.net, is it not, John? Yeah, the EIR is on pinetree.net. Just for some of the people who are
late, the document, if you want to obtain the document, there are 2 copy centers within the city that you can get the document from. I have a CD tonight if you want to take a CD for with the EIR on it. It is at the library, it is at City Hall, it is at the Community Development Department. Let's see, where else is it? It's on the pinetree.net. It's on the city's website. So if you go to the city's website, it's on the city's website to be able to get a copy of. So as the public hearings draw closer, as part of the legal ads will get bigger in part because it's a citywide project. As the public hearing notices, we get closer to the planning commission, city council, so which we have to do legally to put in the paper, and as well as our normal posting spots in terms of the meetings and stuff. But for the documents themselves, the documents out there. If there's anybody who has any questions, they can call us or call me. I'll leave some cards out there, or take a CD tonight, and you can do that as well. So if there's any other way that you have that you might think that we can get the information out there, be happy to hear it. And if there are other places to go and to disseminate the document to get people involved, then let's do that. So.
Thank you.
One more question. If by chance you came up with a major change, I understand it'd be a 45-day time period with EIR. And if hypothetically there was more than one, would that still be able to be resolved in that 45 days, or would it be 45 days for each change?
Well, it would depend on when the issues came up. Let's say, for example, you identify a major issue and at the public hearing, and then we go back. We go back and say, well, that change in the general plan is going to make us have to amend the EIR. If there are other changes that night, we can all take it all in one shot. However, if you keep going single big issue, single big issue, single big issue, you'll have to recirculate the document every 45 days to be able to make sure that it gets noticed properly.
Do you anticipate one city planning commission meeting to handle recommendations to the city council, or are going to be multiple? I would guess based on the volume.
Well, based on the volume of comments that we get, I mean that's going to be a big issue. We don't know as of today. We have got no official comments. We won't know until that October 9th date, until we have an idea of what the written comments are, of how far through how many public hearings are going to be needed for the process.
And then would you expect the commissioners on the planning commission to have some points of discussion they may have at that time also? Are aren't they free to, have an input?
They will, and all of their comments will be forwarded to the planning commission, every single
You
one
mean
of
the
them.
city council?
The city council,
Yeah.
who will then decide whether to adopt all of those.
But that time process is, you don't think it's gonna happen at one planning commission review?
You know, it depends on how many people show up to talk, as with any project. Sometimes you have to continue and continue and continue and continue.
Okay.
You know, just tell everybody has their say.
But until we know what those comments are, then we'll be able to generate what the process we will for the public hearing process.
Also, not to scare you off on this being a never-ending process, because you can amend the general plan throughout the year. Often, the city council will decide, okay, yeah, that's something we'd like to incorporate in here, but because it's gonna require a lot more environmental review, let's adopt what this is, and we'll direct staff to make that our first general plan amendment. You know, those types of things, you can also do that. So it's gonna depend upon how pressing that issue is also, that if it's a major change and it's a pressing issue, they would wanna delay things. If it's not, they can obviously, you know, put it off for a couple months and do a general plan amendment right after it's adopted.
I think you agree though, David, let's not make general plan amendments an overnight thing. They're very lengthy, it takes a long time for them to go through.
Well, yeah, I mean,
It's not, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, it takes a while.
no, but we want to make sure, of a couple things. One is that if there are issues that we can take care of in terms of the comments, that we take care of those issues. That way, we don't start extending the timelines for an additional 45 days. If there is a big issue that really needs to be ferreted out in a sense, that really needs to be researched and you do that, then we can take the additional 45 days to do it. No, we don't really want to adopt a general plan and then start jumping into it. I mean, some cities have taken that approach, but I mean, I wouldn't recommend that.
I seriously doubt you could do 4 general plan amendments in 1 year.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, most of the time most of the time after general plan gets adopted, there's a lot of clerical stuff that comes through as you're reading the document, and so there's some changes that might be there. But in terms of the big issues, that's what we want. We want to generate towards the big issues so that the planning commission and the city council have those issues coming out of the gate. That it's not coming up at the public hearing where we would need to continue it, where more research would be done, and if the council amends it, then we go back and have to recirculate the EIR. So, I mean, for the smaller changes, hopefully those could all be taken care of as part of the response process that's in place right now.
That was my main concern when I talked earlier about everybody putting their comments in. You want to get as much in as you can, so you don't have to do that.
Right.
And that was my concern, because those days changed drastically when we originally started versus what we ended up with.
With you folks getting exposed tonight to the contradiction about the 2.5 in your document, the 1.8 from COG, and the real 1.2 that has existed in 2006, that issue coming up in front of you two folks tonight, are you guys going to come up with some kind of compromise here?
Actually, we will respond to that the way that the environmental impact report responds to that. I will re-verify with COG. I do have it in writing from COG, that number, 2.5%. As well as the other numbers, it is a range, so it will cover all of the scenarios you presented tonight in terms of the numbers. Those are all covered in the EIR. That whole range of growth numbers and possibilities.
Why would they ignore the statistic as it stands as compared to using such a large range?
Because every single jurisdiction, every single agency has a different number.
So can we educate them with the information that you really have?
Actually, I'd be happy to one-on-one with you go over how we came up with the population projections for the general plan.
No, I'm satisfied now that you're going to look into it. Say, for example, your document's wrong and it is 1.8, that Jack's document, and whoever else sits on that COG. What would you do with that information?
Well, if the information, whether it's 1.8 or 2.5, since both have been evaluated as part of the environmental impact report, we would make that correction. So since it has been reviewed, it has been analyzed as part of the EIR, all we're doing is just clarifying the number.
But that's also going to change your financial impact when it comes to water and sewage and and evaluating, permits for growth compared to, utilities to complement that growth.
As it does right now, without the general plan, without any IR, every time Gary updates that thing, he frequently is changing that population growth estimate.
I have a dumb question. What's the difference between 1.8 and 2.5 people wise? How many people does it take to change that number from 1.8 to 2.5 for the city of English County?
Not a huge number. It's
Just
not a
saying.
huge number.
That's a fine suggestion, if you're using a range, which is fine. Let's say you're using a range 1.8 to 2.3. Then put it into population.
We do.
So we have a range of, well, not what's been published.
Not
So
the
you
IR.
have a range of 3,000, whatever, to 4,000. If your percent is a range, your people should be a range.
I tell you what I'll do, I will pull out the population discussion that everything is based on as a separate document, we'll post it on the website, the city's website. And, then you don't have to go looking for it, and everybody can comment on it if they would like. We'll make sure that happens within the next 5 days.
What was that number, Dave, or was it 5,200 or 5,400?
It was 5394.
5,400 people. And, I mean, your question wasn't stupid, Bob, it was very, very astute.
It doesn't change it that much, and it's applicable to not all of the elements. It's applicable oddly enough to the recreation element, because we base that on population. And it's applicable to obviously the water and wastewater. And we've changed that number a lot of times over the years, just in the short time I've been there.
I happen to have read a lot of that stuff, give you actual numbers of people, and this is by memory. I believe the 2.5, Amy, was like 100 persons per year. Does that ring a bell at all?
You know,
Anyway, that's the number so we're adding like 100 persons a year at 2.5. And when you say 1.2, that's 50 persons. And right now we're growing at like 0.6. So that's like 25. So you look at the population. So if we're growing at 25 per year versus growing at 100 cumulatively over the length of time of this, so it is an important number. But that's to give you an idea. 100 equates to 2.5%. That's it.
That sounds good. I'll have to double check.
Check it.
Sounds good.
Check it, please.
Are there any other comments or any other questions or anything?
Yeah, I had some questions about some of the numbers that were in the traffic element. That's all I looked at because the 600 or the 900 and so many pages just intimidated me so much that I didn't even bother. So I looked at what was as of interest to me, being on the Traffic and Circulation Committee. Some of the traffic numbers from some of the various plans, to me, don't make a whole lot of sense. If you add up how many coming in and how many going out and then how many's in the middle, sometimes it doesn't add up. Is that something I should comment about here or later?
No, here, this would be a great time to do it. Actually, you can, in writing would be great, so I'm sure to not miss any of them. Did you compare them with the regional transportation plan numbers, since you're on the
No, I just took the charts that were in the environmental impact
because
report.
I basically stole most of them from the 2007 regional transportation plan and a special memo that was done by peer and peers, so that we would be able to have special numbers for, taking something out.
Well, that was the point of my question. If you cop those numbers from somebody else, it's their fault rather than yours for...
Well, actually, we would not have attempted to generate them ourselves.
No.
They used a computer model on this, and we considered that
So
the
any
best
complaints
available
about
data.
the addition or subtraction of those numbers should go to the person who made them in the first place?
Not necessarily. If there's a suspect number, let us know. I mean, I'll be honest with you, Gary Dio wrote me a response to the administrative draft EIR and says that number's wacky. And I went back to COG and they spent 2 days researching that number. It turned out to be correct, but...
Well, one of the numbers that kind of caught my eye was the traffic that was supposed to be, assuming the southeast extension went in, they put 2,500 cars a day on that road. And if the Greenhorn Creek South extension were to go in, there's 5,000 cars on that road.
That doesn't make any sense to me at all. Why a state highway would only have half the number of people going up and down it as there would on a city road.
And putting that on a comment, I would actually have to sit down, we'd have to work through the numbers, but we would have a response to that. And if it required a change, we would make a change.
Yeah, and another one of them is,
I'm waiting to hear if you can come up with the same one that Gary came up with.
the 7,800 cars start out on Greenhorn Creek Drive from Highway 4, and they go to Finnegan Lane. And then from Finnegan Lane on to State Route 49, there's only 4,900 cars, so 1,900 cars disappeared.
Because some would go into the city and some would continue down to 49.
I can't imagine that 2,000 cars would go down Finnegan Lane to 49. I mean, it's just, it boggles me.
Well, to there as well as to some of the houses in there, but hey,
There's
that's
not
a
that
le-
many,
it's
yeah.
a legitimate.
The point is,
thing
I
to
look at
at.
these things from, not going down on my street, and
Yeah.
I live on Finnegan Lane, and counting the cars. I just can't imagine that many cars. It doesn't make sense.
And pointing out that there's a suspect number that was used in the regional transportation plan, we'll do exactly what we did with Gary's number. We'll say, hey, sounds fishy. Could you look at it again?
Yeah, especially with transportation, because with residential numbers, I mean, when they use forecasting in terms of planning purposes, I mean, they're using 10 trips per house. So, when you think about it, that's the ITE manual used by engineers all over.
10
And
trips
so,
per house at $5 a gallon?
Yeah, exactly.
They did
But I mean,
not factor that in.
But, so you add 100 houses, that's, that's 1,000 trips.
3 days.
So, I mean, so that's where probably some of those numbers came from. But that's kind of, in residential development, in commercial development, I mean, it is all based on square footage of lands, or in terms of property. So, you get a 100,000 square foot, generator or square footage, and they, 2.9 trips per square foot. Also, the numbers just go. So yeah, transportation is one of those things that
I've always had trouble basing a number like counting cars on the square footage of a
Well,
building.
and again, they're not saying number of cars, so much as they're saying the number of trips. So that same car may have been counted 10 times in getting that $2,500.
But you see where we're all going with this.
Oh, no, I see exactly, because traffic is one of those things that it's, the numbers that get modeled can, depending on your growth rate, can escalate well. But from where your population is right now to where it is in 20 years, and I'll just use it, we're what, 3175 right now? And we're projected to go to roughly about 5,500. I mean, that's probably, and I'm just using round numbers, just for ballpark. And I'll use it all residential trips just to make it easy. I mean, you're looking at probably about 1,000 homes. No, 500 homes.
12, I think on the list.
Yeah, 1,200 homes.
So you see, you're supporting your argument. The point is, we've already concluded that we've got a problem with our percentages of growth to actuality. And I hope you agree with the common sense fact that there isn't 10 trips a day per resident in this town. And so now, if some politicians want to put a road into nowhere, those numbers work good. But if you're going to use realistic numbers, and I bet you Paul Radke would even support this. You think there's going to be 5,500 people in this town in 9 and 10 more years?
I hate to open my mouth around you guys.
Well, so that means he agrees with me. Because if he didn't agree with me, he'd argue, see? So the kicker is, when you take those two contradictions that we've exposed tonight as a group together with you folks, and throw some common sense in it, we've got to get that clear and transparent for people.
And just to make it clear, whatever number the Council of Governments used, whichever percentage, that is what they use to get these numbers. So if, as Jack points out, he's pretty sure it's 1.8. That's what generated these numbers, not a 2.5 that we may have come up with for the general plan as an outside range. Even though I think a lower range was even a little lower than that. So
But when I read that document that you sent out, Dave, I couldn't find an author of that 5,439 people. There was no quote to who came up with that number.
Well,
Well, it was part of the ranges that were, if you look in the EIR in terms of the population numbers, that number's in there.
I
And
would,
it's- and
I
it's,
would beg you to be a little more precise about
Okay.
throwing stuff like that out that has a big impact on people's thinking process.
No problem.
We will put that section as a single page on the website.
Okay.
Then you can see all the numbers that went into the general plan, because it wasn't just one number. For the very reason that's been discussed here tonight, different people think it's different numbers for different reasons.
Is there any other questions or any other comments or anything? With that, I mean, that's all we really have, so unless you have any questions, I mean, we'll be here if you want to ask some specific questions, and if not, we really appreciate you coming out tonight, and look forward to look for your comments in the next 30 days, so thank you very much.
City and county.